guys, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident Podcast, a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. We are happy to have our most favorite co host, Sambaza, host and creator of the Sambaza podcast. He is a three-time nominee for Best African Diasporan Podcast by the APVA, and he is from the Republic of Kenya in East Africa. His podcast has been featured with the Joe Loft Radio Media, and he was a presenter at the Afros Audio Podcast Festival. He will be presenting at Podfest coming up soon. How are you, Sambaza?
I am great, and there we go.
Good. Good to see you. Glad to have you here. We have another great episode for you guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the content. We've had a really great season with some great guests, and we just really appreciate everyone participating, active, being engaged in the chat, catching on the replays and such. Be sure to catch up on audio episodes as well as visual episodes, and also check out Sambaza's podcasts as well. So yeah, definitely have been glad to be collaborating as we get closer to winding down the year. And we have a great guest for you today. The title of this episode is Advocacy is Her Superpower. So we have a dynamic guest who will share about advocacy. So, Sambaza, thoughts before we introduce our guests?
As we come to the end of the year, or of the of this good 2024, we are happy to have a guest, and I think the guest today will speak on a topic that is actually dear to some people who might be listening in, and also it is a topic that I think we need to cover as one of the great topics that we have here. And I like the direction that we're following. Like, we're getting relevant topics that come around, and I'm really stoked. As I use that word, I'm really stoked to have the guest today.
Okay, so you said a lot without saying a lot there,
Yeah,
Sambaza. So,
I don't want to let in the I don't want to let in on the secret. You gotta watch.
well, so before we introduce our guest, we recently had conversations about educators and how important it is advocating for our youth and such. And so our guest is another advocate for the youth. And yeah, we are really happy to share about that. So our guest advocates for children who are deaf and hearing impaired. So we've had lots of conversations about supporting our youth, those who are artistic and on the spectrum, as well as youth in all capacities. But in this case, this guest advocates for children in particular who experience hearing difficulties. And so we'll talk about that this evening with her. And I found a few statistics about that. So I wanted to share that before we introduce her. So let's see. And this information comes from the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders. About 2 out of 3 out of 1,000 children in the United States are born with a detectable level of hearing loss in one or both ears. Okay. And then more than 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. So I thought that was an interesting statistic. Another is that approximately 15% of American adults ages 18 and over report some trouble of hearing. And then among adults between 20 and 69, overall annual prevalence of hearing loss has dropped 16%. Well, actually, that one's not so significant, but the one about 15% of Americans report some experience of trouble hearing. So this is a topic that we definitely should be talking about, and glad to get more into this with someone who is an expert, I would say. And then we were able to support our community better. All right. Um, Anything to add before we introduce our guest, Sambaza?
I do have a story. about the about that kids being born deaf. But
Yeah,
let's start the show, and then I think I'll incorporate there. I don't, like so many things I want to put in, but I think let the show start. We don't want to do
sure.
it right now, right? It
Okay.
just came right now. I was just looking at it and I was like, wow, okay.
Okay, no worries. So, with that, we will introduce our guest. So, our today's guest is an esteemed advocate for youth education and a supporter of deaf and hard of hearing children and their families. She provides essential insights on how parents can effectively support and adapt to the unique needs of their children. Additionally, she is the host of the Not Just Another Random Nobody, a podcast that addresses a diverse range of topics and various guests. And our guest is also an accomplished marathon runner, and she has participated in numerous races since 2017. All right. She is also managing TJ's Pudding, a part time business specializing in exceptional pudding creations. So, with that, we will introduce the lovely Trisha Dawkins. Welcome. Okay, come on, flag.
I had to
Go.
bring
Okay.
my flag out.
Nice,
Hey,
nice, nice.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super
Yes.
excited. As Sambaza said, I am stoked to, talk about this topic this evening. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent.
Yes.
question. We'll start off by I have to ask. That's why I said you really made me work. You started running since 2017, right? Did I get it right? Because I had to go through
So
your
I
Instagram
I
post
started
all the way.
running in 2012.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. But I think maybe was started documenting in
Mhm.
2017. My
Okay.
first marathon
and
was 2018.
okay, wow,
Nice.
wow. And then you had to change your podcast to not just another random nobody.
Yes, I did make that change. It started off as conversations with a random nobody,
Hmm.
and then I wanted to do like a relaunch or whatever, so I changed it to not just another random nobody because we're
Okay.
not, we're more than that.
Cool.
Right. And this is also interesting. The TJ's pudding. Well, we're gonna get
Banana
down
pudding.
to that somewhere along the lines,
Okay.
and I don't want to get too much into everything. But I want to welcome everybody who's watching and listening. If you're on Clubhouse, welcome. Just feel free and enjoy. Everybody else, welcome, and just feel free to add the comments, and then we'll continue from here. So, Trisha, just give us a description about who Trisha Dawkins is, because I know you as my sister in
Okay.
podcasting. There's another
Yes.
whole Trisha. Okay.
Okay, so who is Trisha? Trisha is a mom of three. My oldest is 22, my daughter in the middle is 20, and my youngest is 18.
Wow.
I enjoy my family is Jamaican, so I consider myself Jamaican. I'm really Jamaican, but the Jamaicans won't let me have it, so I just say I'm Jamaican. Um, I love running, I love reading. I am a sign language interpreter. What else? I don't know because you put me on the spot.
Well, that was just to start you off, but um,
Yeah.
we're going to focus on the part where you are an advocate for kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. So
Mhm.
I think that's the topic of the day. So can you
Yep.
explain why literacy development is so crucial for deaf and hard of hearing children? And what are the challenges what challenges do deaf children face when it comes to acquiring literary skills compared to hearing children?
Okay. So I'm going to start this this show off just by saying that, you know, this is just Trisha talking, right? I I've been in working with the deaf community for about 18 years. So I'm well versed and I know a lot. I've learned a lot. but I can't speak for the deaf community. They would literally chop my head off, right? I am not speaking for them. I'm just, talking about my experience, what I've learned over the years. Deaf people are not a monolith. So, what I might say tonight in support of sign language, some deaf people might say that's not how I feel. I might not, I don't care about sign language. I want to speak, right? And that's their right. They have the right to do that because they're not a monolith. So but I am in, support of sign language, and I feel like that is extremely beneficial to deaf children and their families. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I'm not even speaking for the deaf community at all. Like, tr- they will come for me. I'm putting it out there. Y'all not going to get me. Okay? So with that being said, um literacy development is extremely crucial for deaf children, just as it is for hearing children, right? We want to talk to our children. We want to know how they feel. We want to know what they like and what they don't like. Imagine having a child and not being able to communicate that. You can't say, Mom, this is what I want. Mom, my stomach hurts, because mom doesn't have that same language. So, allowing or giving deaf children that language from a young age is extremely important, because it helps with self esteem. It just helps with self identity, who they are as a person. So, yeah, it's extremely important. And the latter part of your question, what challenges do deaf children face? They face a lot of challenges, because at that young age, even in schools, if they go to a mainstream school, so they have deaf schools for deaf children, right? And so if they're placed into a mainstream school with teachers that are not, knowledgeable of how to teach deaf children, then they're going to lack that language development. And so it comes into play as far as with their education as well. So that's why it's extremely important to provide that language to deaf children at a very young age.
And then, how common is it for deaf and hard of hearing children not to learn sign language at home?
It's extreme. Man, Jen, let me tell you something. It it's like the norm,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. It
Mm-hmm.
is the norm, and it is so sad, right? I work in education, right? And so a couple years ago, a student's mom came in for whatever reason, and I happened to be in the office with them, and mom was gesturing to her child. Meanwhile, as an interpreter, I'm talking to this student, I'm asking questions, I know how she feels, I know all of these things. So I'm able to have this conversation with this young lady, but mom isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, what? It's extremely common. It's really,
And how
really
old was
common.
that student that you
High
worked with?
school, high
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in the deaf community called DTS, and that stands for dinner table syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, we just had Thanksgiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being the only deaf person in the family, and we're at the Thanksgiving table. Everyone is talking, no one's signing. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's so funny, because you ask what's funny, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll tell you later." And it's like, so you miss out on all the happenings that's happening at the dinner table,
Mm-hmm.
because that language is not there, because no one learns sign language. And that's a
Wow.
big deal. Like, deaf
Mm-hmm.
people don't go to holidays with their hearing families, because they feel left out. And I'm not saying that all deaf people are like this, but a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's very common that sign language is not learned, unfortunately.
Let's see.
I have a question with the sign language stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
we were talking about this a couple of days ago, prior to you coming onto the show, And what I was led to know that is you can actually the people who are hard of hearing can actually create their own language. And so at the home you have your regular the standard one, and then you have one that you can create like some sign language. I have a my nephew is has a speech impairment, so he cannot really say much, and we have to learn through him. And
Mhm.
sometimes he says something and we're like, okay, what did he say? Now I'm looking at a scenario where a parent is uneducated and cannot speak to the child, but then realizes something wrong with the child. By the time
Mhm.
the child starts getting to a certain age, before they start to speak, don't you think there's some interaction with some things that the child will either point, and then they will kind of know how to communicate before that communication, um, before you get to the sign language, like we can speak English, but it's not correct English until you get to told, okay, this is how you speak in English to
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
how you 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 speak and write the sentences as this, and conjugate your sentences. That was what I was looking for. Conjugate the sentences.
Mhm.
Is there a scenario like that?
So what I'm getting from what you're saying is so what that is called is creating home signs where instead of water, it might be water, right? This is the actual sign, but this is what I'm going to gesture for water because I don't know the actual sign. So, gesturing is what you could be referring to as far as creating their own language. I'm going to put this out there as well. So American Sign Language is an actual language with grammar, syntax, all of these things. So it's English is a language and so is ASL, but they're two different languages as well, right? So
Mhm.
some people may think, "Oh, you're signing. That must mean you're signing each and every word that the person is saying." But I'm not because American Sign Language and English are two different languages. So it's not, it's not going to be um I'm going to the store. That's English. In ASL, it's going to be me, store, go. So it's different. So some people might look and say, well, she's not signing all the work. It's two different languages. So when you say that they're creating their own language, it's more of they're creating something that they can use at home, which is called like home
Mhm.
signs. And then as far as learning it correctly, like you mentioned with English, when you go to school, that's when they'll, pick up the right signs for certain things. There was we had a student a couple years ago that came from a different country, and in that country deaf children are kind of like frowned upon and not really educated. So
Mhm.
at 20 years old they came to us with no language, no language from their country, no sign language, no English, nothing, gestures. That's
Mhm.
it. At
Mhm.
20 years old.
I can believe that. I can believe that.
Yep.
And it's also well, I've also heard that it's also regional. Like you'd have like the way we people
Absolutely.
speak in the
Yep.
South.
There's a Kenyan sign language, there's a
Right.
Mexican, Chinese.
Mm.
It's not universal. The only universal form of sign language is this, and it means I love you. And yeah, that that's the
Oh,
only thing. That's the only universal sign.
okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So my question would be, what is the significance of parents learning sign language for their children's development? I don't know if I covered this, and then does it make the relationship change? Or like for example, the parent you had, did the relationship change after you kind of educated them on what their needs are?
So I did not educate them.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do that. That's not my place, right? She came to the school for something for her daughter.
Mhm.
Inside it hurt me and I would have loved, and that's why I want to be a part of something or create something where I can have these conversations with parents like just learn how to communicate with your daughter, with your son. I would like to do that, but I did not have that conversation with her that day, especially not that parent. Ooh, no, no, no. Uh but can you repeat your question because I forgot it that fast?
So, what is the significance in parents learning that language, the sign
Okay,
language? So, like
got
your
you.
child is hard of hearing, and then you also now learn it together,
Mhm.
or separately. You go to
Okay.
school, next school, something like that.
Yeah, it's very significant because you want to create a bond with your child. Like you want to be able to know what your child's favorite food is or their favorite color because you send them
Mm-hmm.
to school where they're using sign language. The teachers are signing, the interpreters are signing, the students
Mm-hmm.
are signing, and then they come home and they can't talk to no one. They can't even
Right.
talk to their mom, their dad, their siblings. That communication needs to be there. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
there because just imagine, with hearing kids and hearing parents, sometimes there's disagreements and you can talk it out, right? What if there's a disagreement with your deaf child or your hard of hearing child, deaf or hard of hearing, and you imagine not being able to express yourself to your mom or your dad, right?
Right. Do you feel like there's a significant reason why parents are not learning signing? Is
Yes.
it hesitancy or like what is, in your opinion?
And yes, in my I'm glad you
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. In Trisha's opinion, what I think, right? What I know, what I've read about, when moms give birth to their baby and they do the hearing test at the hospital and the baby fails the hearing test,
Mm-hmm.
doctors and nurses are like, oh my gosh, they didn't pass the hearing test, so this and that. They make it seem so negative and there's like, oh, I'm so sorry for you, and we can do this to offer better hearing. There's a cochlear implant, a device that was created to kind of, it's not a hearing aid because you actually do have surgery and something's placed on the cochlea to provide that hearing. And then they offer hearing aids. No one ever offers sign language, and that's the easiest route to take, right? Imagine your baby 9 months old, 2 years old, going in for cochlear implant surgery, opening up your head, placing something, putting
Mm-hmm.
it back down, right? And then you then it doesn't really help them. And
Mm-hmm.
deaf kids are often faced with um a lot of speech therapy
Mm-hmm.
that when they become adults, they're like, that was torture. It didn't help me. I wish I never had to go through that. And so parents, because they are trying to fix their child, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking about everybody, I'm just, I did my disclaimer at the beginning, but because they're trying to fix their child, because doctors are like, well, we can offer you this device or this piece of technology, and they never see their child as a child that just can't hear. And learning sign language is like the easiest way to offer that child a decent shot at life. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that children that do have a cochlear implant um all go through the same thing, but a lot of deaf adults do come back and say they wish their parents, because their parents are making the decision to um have them get that surgery at 2, 5 years old, 9 years old, and when they become adults, it's like they wish they would have had that choice, like
Okay.
waited until a decent age where they can decide, I do wanna try for the surgery or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But the
Okay.
main reason why sign language is not, um, promoted is I think it's coming from the hospitals and the medical side of things because they wanna fix these deaf kids. And it's unfortunate. It's really
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate.
Right. And I guess, and I'm thinking, the parents who opt to do the surgery, it's at the recommendation and an encouragement from, the medical side that this
Mhm.
is a feasible option, that it's, a good
Yeah.
option. And that's why the parents say, okay, well, let's do this instead,
Yeah.
or let's do this first.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
And
like, mm-hmm.
I was just going to add that that's why okay, I forgot the thought just left me. Say what you were saying again.
Oh
You were
no, I was
saying
just thinking that maybe the having the resources for sign language
right.
to
All
even
right.
learn may not be right put in front of them, you know.
And
Mhm.
these medical professional, I'm not going to say professionals because they are doctors, but they're not even involved in the deaf community, so they don't even know, how
Mhm.
successful deaf people are. There's so many successful like deaf engineers, screenwriters, actors, everything. Like deaf people can do everything we can do, they just can't hear, and with certain devices they can hear, but
Right.
doctors are not, knowledgeable of this, so they're just like pushing the medical avenue instead of even getting involved in the deaf community to see, oh, let me just see how what this looks like. If a student, if a child just goes into the deaf goes to a deaf school and there's some, let me see what it looks like. They don't even try that. They just push, their own thing, and
Mhm.
that's why it's yeah.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have a story.
Mhm.
Now, this is a personal experience, and I don't think a lot of people have. I've never talked about this before, and I think this is the time we can talk about it. When my son was born, they did the ear test, and he failed.
Mhm.
I remember sitting there, and I was that parent.
Yeah.
I can tell you, there's a lot that goes in your mind for the next. It was a long 24 hours before they did the next test, and
Mhm.
what at me, I was really sad, and I think she saw it in my eyes that I was now projecting that my son was going to be hard of hearing.
Mhm.
And she told me, of all the things on earth that could have happened to him, that is just the least thing that can happen.
Mm.
Now,
Mhm.
fortunately, he passed. Him being him. Um, but I can say that for a parent, just getting that first diagnosis to the point of realization and accepting that your child is going to be hard of hearing for the rest of his life,
Mhm.
I think it takes a toll on you. It's not
Mhm.
something that uh, you can readily accept. And it was me. I was not accepting, and I took fault in myself, saying that what am I, the dad, bringing a creature into this world, and this is what I have to offer for him.
Mm.
Um, it took a while for me, and once we had that talk with my wife, and she said all that, then I was like, okay,
Mhm.
fine. The next one, the next test that they'll test again, he passes, and he did. Um, but like I said, it was a long 24 hours before I got the result. But
Mhm.
it's one thing that I can definitely say I can understand where the parent is coming from the
Yep.
part of the fear before the acceptance. Yeah.
Let me ask you
Absolutely.
this, Trisha. The one
Mhm.
of the statistics I read, and we're veering off, but it just made me think of that. What Sambaza shared. One of the statistics mentioned that a lot of the deaf and in hearing impaired children are born to hearing parents. So is this like a non
Mhm.
what is the word I want to say? Like not genetic type of thing, or
Okay. Okay. So, all right. First, I'm a piggyback off of what Sambaza said,
mm-hmm,
and I'm gonna come back to you, Jen. So, I totally understand what you just said because when I had my first son, even though I knew sign language, I was familiar with the deaf community, all these things, I was like, but what if my son is deaf? Right? So as soon as he was born and he had to do the hearing test, I thought the same thing. I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god." And with your son not passing the first test and then passing the second, I totally understand it's fear. Like you're like, what's gonna happen? Like you can love your child and you can be accepting of them, but then what is society gonna offer them, offer my deaf child? right? And so I think it's so important that you said that because it is scary. It's definitely scary. And so when you are in the hospital in that state, in that vulnerable state, I feel like doctors should offer all options, not just medical options, to kind of alleviate that fear in parents. Because if you come to me and say, okay, well, your child can have this hearing aid, this cochlear implant, blah, 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 I also want to hear, and your child can also thrive learning sign language, going to a deaf school, being involved in the deaf community. And I also would like for hospitals to bring in like deaf advocates in the when a parent finds out that their child is deaf, let me meet a deaf adult. Let me ask them questions, right? Because
Hmm.
that'll make it a little bit more comforting and normal. Like, okay, well, this is a successful deaf adult. My child can be successful too. But now I have all these options to choose from. So that'll kind of make a parent, in my opinion, feel a little better about the
Hmm.
situation. But it is definitely scary. I totally get that. And now to you, Jen. Um, you're yep, I think did you say 1 in 4 families? Whatever that statistic is, it's correct. Like, not a lot
Hmm.
of, families learn sign language, and a lot of deaf babies are born into hearing families.
Yeah.
And as
Hmm.
far as it being, genetic, so deaf people, so there's okay, first, um, I'm just gonna I love you, Jen. I love you, Jen. I love you, Jen. Um, so the correct term in the deaf community is deaf or hard
Hmm.
of hearing. They
Hmm.
kind of frown upon, or I'm not hearing impaired. So I just wanted to put that out there with the hearing impaired. It's like we're deaf or hard of hearing. So
It is a
um
term that's used though in the
right,
community.
but the deaf community, like the deaf community don't use that term. So it's deaf, like big D deaf, where big D deaf is they're culturally deaf, they're
Hmm.
accepting of their deafness
Hmm.
and proud ASL users. And then there's little D deaf, where it's kind of like I'm deaf, but I'm not really involved in the community. Da da da
Hmm.
da da. And then there's hard of hearing, where they have more hearing and sometimes voice for themselves, speak for themselves. Like a lot of I started interpreting back in 2007, and most more of my students in 2007 were like using sign language and being, they were deaf, right? And as the years went on and technology improved,
Hmm.
like a lot of my students are not signing anymore and they're voicing for themselves, right? So, things have changed, but as far as like hard of hearing, um, they tend to voice for themselves and sometimes learn sign language, sometimes doesn't. But back to the genetic question, there are, it's so tricky. It's so tricky because there are families that generations are deaf.
Hmm.
And then there's families where it's like one cousin, and then it's like just it varies.
Okay.
But I don't think but it's weird because in some like deaf families will continue to carry on that trait or that gene, but then in other families it's just very sporadic. So
Okay. That makes sense.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. But I mean, it's something that a parent needs to blame themselves. Sambaza, you made some kind of
No.
statement
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if
yeah,
your
yeah.
son would have ended up being deaf, then you
Right.
shouldn't feel like, oh, what did I do? And
Right.
actually, this is common. We had several conversations about children being on the spectrum, and we've had,
Mhm.
spoke with a parent who's felt like, oh, what did I do? Did I eat something wrong? Did I?
Yeah.
No, these
Right.
things can happen, but that
Yep.
doesn't mean that your child can't thrive, as you mentioned as well too. So we just want to be
Exactly.
here to give the proper support.
Absolutely, and it's
Hmm.
unfortunate because, like you said, Jen, it's not something that the parents should blame themselves
Hmm.
for. But and then in some cultures, I've seen where parents treat their, you know, deaf child a little differently,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because of culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's so unfortunate, but that's why I just
Yeah,
try to love these crazy kids when they come to school, you know.
definitely. Definitely.
So actually, one of my coworkers, she was telling me that her one of his child is hard of hearing, and the
Mhm.
family was also hard of hearing. And when she walked, the first time when she met and she was meeting the family, they walked into a house and there was a party going on, and the music was loud, and she was like,
Mhm.
"What's going on here?" It was like, and people were bumping, and she was like, "Look, all of them are deaf. They can't hear. They're
Yes.
hard of hearing, and they were still enjoying the music." I was trying to make
Mhm.
her online and join in. Oh, yeah, she's joined in online. So um, she has her own story to tell. But I guess we're
Mhm.
gonna go to the comments right now. We've been talking a lot, so we need to acknowledge the people who are on. And let's start from the top. All right. That's Denise Moore. She says, "Hello, family. Um, welcome to the show." And who else? Jane? We'll come down here.
Yes.
Yeah, whips are back together. Hey, you got somebody who's like me. Say you're cute and smart. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And I'd like to welcome to the show Sharon. This is her first time here, and Sharon is my coworker,
Okay.
and she's the one who has a son who's hard of hearing. And actually, when I was making reference to some of the things that I know of, she's the one who's educated me on that.
Mhm.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming to the show and welcome. All right, we can continue now. Jen, with your questions,
Okay. So,
or did we already talk about the misconceptions?
yes.
Okay, so now next question: schools, are they doing enough to support literacy and development of deaf students or hard of hearing students?
From my experience, I have been at the same school for 18 years.
Hmm.
We're kind of like the cluster school, where our deaf students from all over the county will they have the choice to go to their zone school, and an interpreter will be provided if they, choose to stay at their zone school, or they can come to our school to be among other deaf kids as well. And from what I see, we have a DHH teacher, we have interpreters, we have speech language pathologists, audiologists, and I feel like in the mainstream schools, we do provide um, appropriate services to our deaf and hard of hearing students. We offer all the support. We make sure parents are informed, and I believe that each, like, public schools should have a DHH, a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, because you need someone that understands being deaf,
Hmm.
understands deaf culture, understands, the ins and the outs, so that they can be a proper advocate for our DHH kids. Um, certain counties, certain schools, the people that are in charge of deaf education sometimes don't even know sign language. Sometimes don't are they're not familiar with the deaf community, and it's just really a disadvantage. But from what I've seen at my school, we offer the proper services, and um, the best place for a deaf kid is a deaf school, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
they'll get that education straight from the source, straight from a native signer, someone who knows their language, someone who can understand them and they can relate to, and they can still get that, education. But in sometimes that's just not possible, right?
Right.
The deaf schools, you have the option. Some states, you have the option to uh, go back and forth every day, or There are residential schools where you stay at the school for the week and you go home on the weekends. And, but it varies by state. So that would be ideal for our deaf and hard of hearing students. But, due to the fact that a lot of deaf and hard of hearing students are born into hearing families, sometimes that hearing parent, I don't want to let go of my kid for a whole week, and that's understandable. So they put them in a mainstream school, which is fine because they'll have that interpreter, they'll have a DHH teacher, so they'll have that support as well.
Okay. Good. And so, our next thought was about how schools and communities can work together with some of these programs, like you mentioned, where each other can learn,
Mhm.
and better support the student. And I guess depending on the school, they may or may not have such a program. Um, can you share about resources or programs that where parents can find that information?
Absolutely. Um, Community colleges, where I live, well, I live in Pennsylvania, but I work in Maryland. But in
Okay.
Maryland, you have the Hearing and Speech Agency. So wherever you live, you just want to reach out to organizations that offer services like interpreting services. They're gonna know. They can point you in the right direction as far as resources on learn for families. There is the Association of for Deaf Children.
Mm-hmm.
That A is not correct, but I'm gonna find it because I typed it up. I put it on the questionnaire thing. But there are different organizations that do offer services for families, and most of the time, if you have a deaf child, the services are free. You can learn sign language for free. There's always something in your community. You just have to get on Google, just type in sign language support or anything, and every
Mm-hmm.
it'll all come up. The resources are there. It's just that sometimes it's just frowned upon, and it's not promoted as much as learning to speak and things like that. So, but there are resources out there. There's apps out there that parents can download and
Mm-hmm.
utilize in their free time and things like that.
Yeah, I've definitely seen American Sign Language as a course that you can take, almost like
Yes.
studying to get your notary license. You know what I mean? Like there's
Mhm.
a small form, like digital type of class you can take.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's options.
Yes, and it's I used to offer sign language classes because, oh my God, the number one question that everyone, can you teach me sign language? No, I can't, right? It's so annoying. It's like whatever your profession is, can you teach me how to social work? Can you teach me how? No, I don't. That's my job. I don't want to do it outside of work, right? But at one point I did offer basic sign language classes, and over the years, deaf people have been very vocal, quote unquote vocal. That was a little joke, but whatever. Um, been vocal about not having hearing people teach their language. And
Mm-hmm.
that is fine. Like that, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
and it's, I was able to, get it real quick because it's like if you're of one, like if white people do teach Black history, but you would
Mm-hmm.
prefer it to be from a Black person, right? And so with deaf people, they are like, this is our language. Let us teach our language. So now I don't offer to teach sign language, even if it's basic. I will refer you to a deaf person because they should be able to you know, get the profit from their language.
I mean,
And
almost
it's
having 20 years experience, though, clearly someone who
yeah,
is not a.
yeah, you're right. You're right. But let me tell you something. That deaf community, they're not gonna get me. They're not gonna get me. um, but
Okay.
but I totally understand because if you go on TikTok, if you go on YouTube, you see so many hearing people teaching sign language, and it's wrong. it's so wrong, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
deaf people are like, "What are you doing?" And that's why I think that whole movement came about because it's being taken advantage of. And I feel like it should stop. I feel like it should come through deaf teachers,
Okay.
native signers, because that's the
Mhm.
best way to learn. When I first learned ASL, oh, my chair went back a little bit. Um, my teachers were deaf, and I went into the classroom like, how am I going to learn? And it was so easy. It was so simple. It was really mind blowing because I
Mhm.
really thought like, how am I going to learn from deaf people? They're not speaking, but it was very easy. And yeah,
Good. Good.
yep, 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 yep.
Okay. Sambaza, let's get these comments in the chat, if you
Yes.
would. Okay.
And Sharon said it's so true. I think she was referring to something there. And then she says audiologists
Yes.
have a wealth of information. Oh, I think we want to find out who those are. That's the first time I've heard something like that
Mm-hmm.
Audiologist.
to do with speech,
Yep.
right?
They're
Um,
very knowledgeable.
Sebastian asks, is the industry a place to find job opportunities? And what about earnings, salaries working in the industry?
So back to what
How
Sharon
much do
said
you think?
first. Yeah, that one. Um, Audiologists are a wealth of information. They are the ones in the schools. I mean, and outside of school, but from my experience in the schools, sorry, my cat is trying to attack me. That perform the hearing test, and they'll come to the school if the child's hearing aid is messed up, they fixing it, they're giving batteries, their support. They do have a wealth of information, and they're very, very resourceful as well. Totally agree with Sharon. Um, did you guys have I can't speak on audiology, but I do know that they are very
Mm-hmm.
beneficial.
For sure.
But I was gonna go into what Sebastian was asking.
Let's see.
Um, Job opportunities. I mean, there are a plethora of opportunities within uh, the deaf community or within interpreting. There are residential opportunities, like I mentioned at the deaf school, the residential schools. There are dorm counselors
Mm-hmm.
that work there, and plethora, absolutely. And earnings, um, it's it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy interpreting.
Oh, good. I mean, you've been in it for a long time, almost
Yeah,
20 years, right?
yeah, yeah, almost
So
20 years.
it's been a rewarding
Yes, very
experience.
rewarding.
Good. So,
Mhm.
definitely worth doing some research, Sebastian. And
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
obviously, some of the information is going to be regional. You may earn more in a particular coast or something like that.
right.
So look into it if
Yeah.
that's something that you're interested in.
Mhm.
I think I can tell Sebastian. I know two people, Trisha and somebody else, who do sign language, and yes, they sound paid. They sound paid.
I mean, I could be making more, right? But
Hmm.
that's besides the
And that may
point.
be a good
But
skill to add it in addition. Like I said, a lot of
yes.
those courses are
Oh
digital. You
gosh.
can, take that
Yes.
in with what you're currently doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And with
Oh,
just like with I'm sorry, Sambaza, just real fast. With any other language, if you go to Korea and you start
Hmm.
speaking their language, instantly it's like, oh my God, we love you. You're welcome. Same thing with sign language. If you come across a deaf person and you say, hi, my name is whatever, they're going to be like, oh my goodness, you know sign language. And it's just so, they love it. And so if you
Hmm.
even learn how to spell your name, if you learn the alphabet, I might be annoyed. Like, I don't care if you know the alphabet, but a deaf person, they're going to be like, wow, that's so awesome.
Hmm.
Keep it up. So just any little bit of sign language you can learn, it'll be beneficial.
Cool. Cool.
I think we got a quick comment here from Sharon. She's saying something about I know in Texas, the Texas workforce offers programs to help the deaf and hard of hearing find employment, and college is free for deaf in Texas. Okay,
That's
maybe Sharon, you
awesome.
might come to the show and give us an experience, a first-hand experience of how it.
Yeah.
We'll talk on the side and see
Good
if you.
information.
come on. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
good to hear from you. Now there's this thing we were talking about kids, right?
Mhm.
Learning sign language, and you already said that you want kids to be in the together for some time, like maybe during the week in school, and learn with people who are, I don't like this word, who are of the same on the same space with them, right? I like the word space. So that the deaf can they can embrace the deaf culture, sign language, so that it can help them have some form of sense and identity.
Mhm.
Kids grow up and they're also human, and they would also want to feel belonging to some to the other world. There's another world. There's a bigger world out there.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the case in point where the child, like if I grew up with somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing and then teaches me the sign language and we grew up together, I see him as a person. I don't see him on the other side of whatever he is.
Mhm.
I relate to him. The same experience I have with my nephew. He can speak the sign language. We're learning from him. When I'm with him, I don't see anything else. It's just him being him. And do you think that it does it take away from the child being integrated into society? Whereas when you say you're in the space of the deaf and hard of hearing and you keep them there, they'll get their community, but then you want them to be integrated in the bigger world. Is there a clash between the two?
So you said that you want them to be integrated into the bigger world, right? When
Right.
they get to the bigger world, who can speak with them? Who can communicate with them, right? So is the bigger world creating a space for a deaf person to be welcomed, right? Are people able to communicate with them when they go into the hearing world, basically? Now, what I'm saying, I'm not saying, oh, a deaf child has to stay in the deaf community. That's it. That no, not at all, right? But that's where they find their comfort. That's where they can speak, they can express themselves, versus when they come into the hearing world, they're still going to be involved, they're still going to love their family, they're still going to have hearing friends, but it's just that communication aspect that's going to be a little it's going to create a struggle for them, right? So when they enter the hearing world, that communication might be, oh, let me write back and forth, or let me text on my phone and then show you, and that's how we communicate, and that's fine. So absolutely, deaf people are in both worlds. I just feel like they feel more comfortable with within their community because they feel understood. And sometimes in a hearing world, a lot of hearing people are not knowledgeable of that experience. So a lot of the times I'm faced with, oh, you work with you're an interpreter, or when I go on a job, if I go to a job and I'm the interpreter, they're like, "Thank you so much for coming. You're so nice." Ma'am, I'm getting paid to be here. Like, no, I'm not nice. This is my job, right? Like you're so kind to be here for this deaf person. No, they just got on my nerves. I got paid and I'm leaving now. Right? It's that misconception of, "Oh my god, they're deaf. Let me just be." No, they are just like us. They will curse you out, right? They will cheat on you. They would everything we do. It's
Mm-hmm.
done in the deaf
Right.
world. And so it's like, let's not like pity. And deaf people do not want that pity,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're just like you and I. They just can't hear. Everything else is there.
So I'm gonna say I was biased because when I was growing up, coming from Africa, and that's where my fear came, because we lived near a school for the deaf and blind.
Mhm.
Those kids were, you could see them, they were somewhere. And, you know, and I'm going to say this, they used to make jokes about it. Well, not really jokes, but funny comments about it. And I, did I get, I don't think I got into, but it was a world of fear coupled with, they're there, we're here, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
integrated them when maybe were running like school games and stuff like that. And the first time I actually got into a conversation with somebody who was not even deaf, was hard of hearing, was
Mhm.
I came to America at 28 years old, 27, 28 years old. And this was, I thought it was a joke because I was trying to talk to this, we were in class, and I was trying to talk to this lady to do an assignment together. And she kept on looking at me so weirdly. And then the guy next to me told me, she can't hear you.
Mhm.
And look at your mouth and how you're speaking to know what you're saying.
Mhm.
Only to realize that she worked with some Arabs, and the Arabs were speaking, so she could see how the Arabs were speaking and knew how
Mhm.
what they were saying through them. And I was African coming, and then here I was. My speaking was different, so of course she could not get what I was saying.
Mm, right.
You can imagine this, the thought process of like, wow, so she has to look at me to talk to me, because I was like, why is she staring at me and my mouth?
Mhm.
What am I doing? So that was my integration the first time I actually talked to somebody like that. And I think at that time it gave me hope, because I was fearful of what people are, because I had seen how it is back.
Mm, mhm.
It was braille, and I did not know about the implants or anything like that. So I think at 28, that was my culture shock moment of
Wow.
ASL community. Is it ASL community or
Mhm. Deaf community, yeah. Yep.
okay. So
Wow.
that's that was my culture shock at that time.
Mhm.
And Miss
Yeah.
Bard has a
And
comment. Go ahead.
And that's another thing with like reading lips. Some deaf people were raised orally. So oral,
Mhm.
they're learning how to read the lips, they're learning how to mouth the words. And research shows that like only 30% is actually understood
Mhm.
when reading lips. Because sometimes I go somewhere and even at the hospital, oh, they don't need an interpreter, they can read my lips. No, 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 because only
Mm.
30% is being understood. And so especially in a medical environment, you don't want that. But that
Mhm.
is a form of for some deaf people that grew up orally, and that you would see that in a lot of older people as well. From back in the day, there was actually an oral school. So
Mhm.
yeah, it,
Oh
it
wow.
it's yeah, it's a lot if you
Yeah.
dive into it.
Okay, we got a
Interesting.
quick comment here. Tiffany Bird said, "My son has decided to enter the ASL community. He's learning sign language as
That's
part of."
Oh,
awesome.
good.
That's awesome.
Good.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
All right. I think this one here we kind of touched on some of those. If we want to jump ahead,
Mhm.
let's see. I
I
suppose
think we covered everything in
yeah,
a
I think
nutshell.
we
All
have. So I don't
came
want to throw
through.
you off.
Yeah. Now let's get to the good stuff, right?
Mhm.
Ah, you're a runner,
I am a runner.
a
She's a
marathon runner.
runner. She's a track star. Sorry.
You've been running since 2012. How has that been
Mhm.
for you?
It's been amazing. I love to hate running or hate to love running. Yeah, whatever. Um yeah, but it's what I do, it's who I am. I haven't so I did the Baltimore half in October. I did really well. I trained well. Um and then I just stopped running.
How long did it take you?
Like I'm in a slump right now.
How long did you take to
The
finish the half?
Baltimore half,
Mhm.
2:18.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
That
that's
wasn't the marathon that was going on. Oh
no,
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 the
no,
that was
no.
a
That's
half.
the story.
The
Okay, so
half.
now here's the
Wait,
thing.
what marathon is Jen talking about?
Jen is gonna be mad at you right now. So we're in Baltimore. Remember that day I asked you?
Yeah,
You
I
have
saw
to
you
hear
were in
this. Okay.
Baltimore.
So this is what is happening, guys. We are at the Afros and Audio Festival,
Yeah, you
podcasters,
were here the
African
same
American
time.
podcasters, and you should have been there, not running. Well, either way,
Right,
right?
as a yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
were running
I
She
there.
was, but
was.
not the full marathon, the half marathon. It was the same race
Okay.
though.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
good.
Either way,
Okay.
either way, it kind of stalled us. Do you know how long it took me to get Jen together so that we could go to the to? how many? It took us
Wait,
like an hour.
you bumped into him though, right? I want to
No, we
say I
didn't.
remember
Mm-mm,
you didn't.
mm-mm.
Oh,
I
okay.
saw his picture. I was like, "Oh, he's in Baltimore and he ain't saying nothing." I
Oh,
got you. I got you.
okay,
I got
okay,
you. But I let it
okay.
slide. I let it slide. I let it slide. But I can only imagine that traffic was pretty bad. It's all, and
Yeah.
every year people get got because they forget that it happens every year. But like you guys are out of town, I understand you wouldn't know. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
was struggling. I literally had to walk 2 blocks to get to his car,
Oh
and
my
I was
god.
just about to cry
Yeah.
because you talking about running a marathon
Mm.
and walking 2 blocks was like in a strange city. I was just like, oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I apologize on behalf of the runners.
So yeah, that was the most interesting part with people that you're only 6 feet apart from each other. When I was seeing the pictures, it was later on in the evening because I did not know you were in PA. I always thought you were in New York or something.
God.
Oh, yeah, no, no, no. I live in PA, but I still work in Maryland, so I do a lot in Baltimore because there's
Okay.
nothing to
So
do out here.
it's pretty. It's not that far, right?
No,
Yeah,
no, it
yeah,
takes me 53 minutes to get to work.
yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep, because I'm in the York, PA area, which is close to the Maryland line.
okay,
Oh.
cool,
Mhm. Yep.
cool, cool,
And let's talk about
cool.
your heritage now, because you waved
Mhm.
in the beginning, like I waved my.
Yes, I did wave my flag.
So, what do you like about it, and what do you like about Jamaica? Tell us something good about Jamaica.
Oh
That
my God, Jamaica is the best. Like, what do you mean? The
uh
food, the
Yeah.
music, the people, the beaches. I mean, everything. Like, the vibe is just like
Hmm.
top tier.
How often do you get to go?
So, growing up, my mom would send my brother and I to Jamaica every summer. Every summer. And
Okay,
that's actually how
nice.
I was introduced to sign language because I met a deaf kid in Jamaica. And
Hmm,
then I would go to camp as well, and they offered sign language. So that kind of piqued
nice.
my interest from a young age. But yeah, my mom would send us every year, the last day of school, the next day we on the plane. We coming back the day before school starts, right?
Oh
So
wow.
that's why I feel like I am like more Jamaican than American.
Yeah.
But at when I turned 16 and got my first job, she stopped sending us. I could buy my own ticket is what she told me. So the trips have been, a little limited since then. But
Oh.
I went back the last time I was in Jamaica, I think it was for my grandmother's funeral. She was 100.
Ooh.
Hmm.
Yeah, 102, maybe
Condolences
100.
to
I think
you.
100. Yeah. So, thank you. But yeah, I try to go back, but I don't go back as often because I'm so used to being in Jamaica, I do like to visit other places and try to get some new places under my belt. So,
Okay, cool.
but
All right.
And
Jamaica,
then
I love it.
also, okay, go ahead, Sambaza.
All right. Baby girl, you're oxtail. No make nobody's son treat you like your chicken back. So you need a translation? Translation?
Right, because yeah, like you say, actually, that's what she says on her podcast. Translation, she'll tell something
Translation?
in translation. Okay, translate that for us.
Sweetheart, you are all the way up here. Don't let nobody's son treat you like you down here. Okay, we're not chicken back. We are
Mm,
oxtail. Oxtail is very expensive. We are oxtail. We are not chicken back. We are not the struggle meal. That's what that means.
okay. Love it. Love it. And so, about this podcast, tell us more.
So I'm so sad that he brought up my podcast because I have not been recording. I've been
Okay.
slacking and I love podcasting. Oh my God, I love
Hmm.
it so much. So hopefully in the near future, I'll bring it back. I started one with my daughter as well.
Nice.
And that one was called, mm, how do I forget the name of my own podcast? Withholding Nothing.
Hmm.
Because my daughter and I had a little hard time bonding and getting along when she was a little bit younger. And as she got older and we had more conversations, and I was able to, be honest with her about certain things, and she was honest with me, we have these amazing conversations together. And I was like, we need to have a
Mm.
podcast. And so that's why I started it. But her schedule got crazy, my schedule got crazy. So kind of withheld it. It's on hold right now. And I do want to
Okay.
apologize for my ashy hands, guys. I did not put on lotion.
You're fine. Okay.
saw them. You just told us.
Somebody had to, because I'm telling right in here in the creases. I keep seeing it in the camera. I'm like, somebody see it. Sorry, guys. I'm crazy. Yes, I am. Sorry.
Hilarious.
She's a vibe. She's
Okay.
a vibe. When you listen to her podcast, they're always a vibe. I've always enjoyed them. I go back and listen to them
Oh,
once in a while.
thank
And when I noticed
you.
what you're doing with your daughter, I was like, okay, breath of fresh air, a change, so that it can push you to
Yeah.
doing more. But then again, we'll still enjoy them. We'll still go back to them. So I
Yeah.
know
Hmm.
as
Well,
a podcaster, every always a podcaster. You and I think when you uh, with your no, you're not on TikTok. I'll follow you on Instagram. So your Instagram,
Instagram.
you have stories there, and that's another way of podcasting.
Yeah.
Podcasting, and
mhm.
you have a trail of conversations there. So hopefully, maybe you could pivot to running. Tell us more about the running part and anything else. But
Absolutely.
We'll be happy to share that link for your podcast, which is called Not Just Another Random Nobody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
here comes the best part of it.
Okay.
You got to tell us your socials, your handles, and everything else. Oh, by the way, the BMW Marathon is this weekend, and I'm going to be running it. My kid's also running a 5K on Saturday.
Oh,
You're doing a marathon?
Half, 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 half.
Wow.
that's
Saturday, I'm doing a
big.
5K.
Saturday you doing the 5K, and
Wow.
then Sunday you doing a half marathon?
Yeah, I've been doing it for the last 4 years or so.
Wow, that's awesome. Wait, where is that? That's in
Dallas,
Atlanta? No,
in Dallas.
Dallas?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
excellent.
Congrats, early
Mhm.
congratulations.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That weight is just gonna fall off of you. That's we're gonna have to get a different picture because your face doesn't
Yeah,
even
he's
look
lost a
like.
lot of weight already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
definitely.
Awesome.
So the best part comes right now when you're gonna
Mhm.
give us all your handles now, podcast and everything else, and share with us some special words of encouragement to anybody out there.
All right. So first, I do want to start with some organizations that people can do some research if you have a deaf child or family member, and you're like, you know what, I need to learn sign language. You can check out the American Society for Deaf Children. That's the first one that I was trying to remember, and then the National Association of the Deaf. There will be a lot of resources on their website, and handandvoices.org is one that I learned about last night, where I reached out to them to actually become a volunteer because they're doing exactly what we were talking about tonight as far as reaching out to families, being that support to families. So I did reach out to them in hopes to, become a part of their organization. As far as my socials, you can follow me on Instagram at random nobody, and that's nobody with a K, because we be knowing things, but we not like popular, so we're nobodies. Get it? You know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm such a mess. Yeah, Instagram. Sambaza's like, why did I invite her here? Um, I'm on Facebook, but you don't got the same thing on Instagram is on Facebook. And as far as words of encouragement or anything like that, just believe in yourself. You can do anything you want to do. Once you step out of fear, you let fear go, because fear is a liar. Fear lied to me for many years of my life. And when I decided to stop paying attention to fear, that's when I started going after goals that I thought I could never achieve. So that's one thing I would want people to do, is just not listen to fear. And as far as the topic for tonight, If you are a parent or a family member of a deaf person or a hard of hearing person, go out and learn sign language, do some research, find somewhere you can get free classes, and just, become a part of the solution, because we want everyone to feel like they belong. So that's what I would just suggest to those watching tonight. And thank you so much, Jen and Sambaza, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of
I'm super,
course.
super, super
No,
stoked.
hiding. What are you hiding about the cooking? You see, I haven't told us about the pudding, the
Oh,
business.
and the banana pudding. Yeah. So I
I was waiting on that.
uh make a delicious banana pudding. So if you would like to try some and you live in Maryland or close to York, Pennsylvania, I can be of service to you. I ain't gonna ship nothing, so don't ask me to do don't ask me, okay. But yeah, but it's really good and people love it. Yeah, so
Great.
check it out.
Because I haven't seen any updates. You did it for a while, and I kept on searching and scrolling. Now everything on your post is all about running,
It's
running,
all
running.
about running, and now I ain't running no more. I mean, I am running. I'm you said that you're gonna do a 5K Saturday. I'm gonna run with you in spirit on Saturday. I really haven't been consistent, but I need to get back out there because I looked at some pictures and I was like, oh wait, I need to start running
Oh,
again.
oh, just before you go, we got a quick comment here from Denise. She talks. She says, "I love ASL. I've been interested for years. Drop the recipe in the chat."
I got you. I got you. I got you.
Okay. Shout out to our former guest, Miss Denise. Good to see you, and thank you for supporting and viewing. All right.
So, Jen, with that, take us home.
All right. And then again, we just want to thank Miss Trisha Dawkins for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing this information. Definitely please to have this conversation and share with the community who can better support individuals and loved ones, young people in their life in a more, concrete way. Any
Mhm.
final thoughts, Miss Trisha, before we conclude? We will share all your socials.
Mhm. Final thoughts. Um, get the full picture to parents who have deaf and hard of hearing children. Do your research on the medical side as well as meeting deaf adults and seeing how successful deaf people are and can be and will continue to be, and never look at it, and I know it's hard, but don't view it in a negative way. Just, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and that light might just be sign language, so check it out. Don't
Absolutely.
sweep it under the rug.
For sure. And thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
All right. So we appreciate you guys for joining us. We hope that today's conversation has inspired and enlightened you. If you found today's episode meaningful, please consider sharing it with friends and family and colleagues. Our collective awareness and advocacy play a crucial role in creating positive change. And we ask you to stay tuned for more engaging content, and we look forward to continuing these important conversations. So, we do ask Miss Trisha to stick around for the proper goodbye. And thank you guys for joining the collective. Until next time, take care. Take care.
Bye.
Let's see.